Hello and welcome to this month's Wild World of Wounds. This month we're going to go over study designs, cohort studies, case-controlled studies. These are things we hear all the time, but what do they really mean? What's good, what's not, what does it all mean? That's what we're going to go over today. So hold on to your seats. Here we go. Cohort studies. So what is that? So it starts with a group of exposed people. You collect data for outcomes or the disease of interest, and it can actually be prospective or retrospective. So a good example is the nurses' health study that we've all heard about. That's a large population of nurses followed over time to evaluate for the development of various diseases. Another example would be following a group that both takes and does not take oral contraceptive pills, for example, to see if they appear to increase the rate of certain cancers. So you follow these two groups. One group takes oral contraceptives, the other group, they don't take it, and you just see what happens. So that's what a cohort study is. Well, how does that differ from a case-controlled study? So this actually works backwards, or the opposite of a cohort study. A case-controlled study starts with the disease or the outcome and then looks back at the exposure of interest. As we said, with a cohort study, we look at an exposure and then see if it gives us some disease of interest. But with a case-controlled study, you start with the disease, you start with the outcome, and you look backwards. So this has to be a retrospective study when you do a case-controlled study. For example, a group with the disease is compared to a population without the disease. For example, you evaluate a group both with and without lung cancer, then look back to see the rate of smoking or the exposure in each group. So again, this has to be a retrospective study design. Well, then what's a randomized controlled trial? Well, we know this. Groups are randomly assigned to a placebo arm and to a treatment arm. An example, one group is assigned to vitamin C supplement, another one is randomly assigned to a placebo. After a period of time, outcome of interest and side effects are measured in each group. It's considered the best study to show treatment A caused result B, as opposed to showing an association. It can control for unexpected or unassessed confounders. So you try and control for those things in a randomized controlled trial. Here's another thing we've heard about: intention to treat. An intention to treat analysis. So we'll see that a lot of times in study designs. What does that mean? So intention to treat, all patients are evaluated based on the group they were assigned to in an intention to treat analysis, regardless if they actually received the study treatment or completed the assigned care, or if they were lost to follow-up. So the idea is this will allow for the opportunity to take into account the differences that might exist between the patients that completed the study treatment and those that didn't. So a little bit more about intention to treat. It allows for the interpretation of results in the real world, outside the study group. It's important to know, for example, that although a study showed a significant benefit when drug A was analyzed in a randomized controlled trial, if a large percentage of the patients did not actually complete the treatment arm due to drug side effects, you need to know that. So, for example, if there was a large number of side effects and a large group of that population dropped out of the study, you wouldn't necessarily know that just based on the results of the randomized controlled trial. Those people may be excluded from the randomized controlled trial. But in an intention to treat analysis, as we said, all patients are evaluated based on the group they were assigned to, even if they actually didn't finish the treatment or complete the follow-up or were lost to follow-up. So that's why an intention to treat analysis can be a powerful tool, because you can see what might really happen in the real world. Because you might want to know that, yeah, this drug worked if you could take it, but half the people who take it drop out of the study. Thus, the drug could appear great in the standard study results, but not good in the ITT, intention to treat analysis. So then let's talk about numbers needed to treat and numbers needed to harm. This is another very important concept whenever we're looking at a study. Oh, it's a way of expressing likelihood of benefit or likelihood of harm from a particular intervention. So how do you calculate it? Let's first start with number needed to treat. So patients who received drug A had a 30% mortality, for example. But patients who took the placebo had a 50% mortality. So the benefit is 20%. 50 minus 30 gives you 20%. You take 100, you divide it by 20, and that gives you 5. In other words, the number needed to treat to have that benefit, that mortality benefit, is 5. We would need to treat 5 patients to prevent 1 death. This also suggests that the other 4 patients had no mortality benefit. How about number needed to harm? So in a group of patients who took a placebo, 10% developed liver failure. But in another group that took drug A, 50% developed liver failure. So what's the percentage risk, the absolute percentage risk of harm? It's 40%. Take 100, divide it by 40, you get 2.5. So the number needed to harm to cause liver failure in patients who took my drug, drug A, is 2.5. For every 2.5 patients, for every 2.5 patients who take my drug, 1 will be harmed with liver failure. All right, so let's put it all together. Numbers needed to treat and number needed to harm is a really nice way to explain to a patient in a really comprehensible way the expected risks and the expected benefits or potential benefits of a treatment. They can analyze a treatment plan in a real-world manner. For example, we were just talking about drug A. Taken together, the number needed to treat for drug A is 5. So in other words, you have to treat 5 patients to have 1 patient get that mortality benefit and not die that we talked about. But numbers needed to harm for that same drug, for every 2.5 patients we treat with our drug, 1 has liver failure. So that really starts to put things into perspective for you. Do I want to take the risk of taking this drug or not? I understand those risks and I understand potential benefits. You know, one really a well-known professor, Jerry Hoffman, always says we shouldn't say risks versus benefits, because risks imply there's a chance of risk or of a bad outcome, but benefits imply everybody gets that benefit. But that's just not true for drugs. There's a number needed to treat that gives you a potential benefit. In our example, in drug A, it's 5 people you need to treat for 1 to get the benefit. And there's a number needed to harm. In our example, 2.5 patients to have 1 patient have liver failure. So probably a better way to describe it to patients is potential risk and potential harm. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this month's Wild World of Wounds study analysis. So next time you're reading a study, you'll understand what all those terms mean. All right, we'll see you next month. Bye for now.